right, Darren. Jessica, hey, congratulations on your short film. I'm not even sure if I'm going to pronounce this right. Nisei?
Nisei, yeah.
Terrific. Well, hey, congratulations on Nisei, your short film. I understand it's been going through the festival circuit most recently. What at Holly Shorts and Newport Beach. I mean, this. How do you guys feel about your short film going through being seen by a lot of audiences?
Yeah, it's been super exciting. Yeah, obviously about the subject matter of the film, it's very a West Coast, based storyline about the internment camps and the Japanese Americans, what they went through. And so, we played at Indie Shorts in Indianapolis, and we're playing in Naples, Florida next week. And so, being able to expand and introduce new people to these, stories that they otherwise may never have learned about has been really, really exciting. And the reception has just been awesome every single festival. So.
Yeah.
Most excellent. So tell us where the original idea came from. What sparked the idea for to do Nisei?
Yeah, so I'm Japanese American myself, and I grew up in Northern California, and I grew up with these stories about my grandfather and my grandmother and the whole community about being in the internment camps during World War II. And I always just kind of like assumed it was common knowledge just because I grew up with it and I would listen to these stories. And it wasn't until I got older that I really appreciated how much information they gave me when I was a kid. And, I talked to friends and family even on the West Coast, and it would be like one line in a history textbook, if that. And so I was always kind of around these stories and always like would do book reports on them and do things like all through middle school and high school. And then when I became a filmmaker, I always knew that I would want to tell this story eventually or some form of this. And so timing worked out where we were able to produce it. So
Yeah.
Well, let me first admit this is that I have no idea about this story. I know about the Japanese internment camps. I mean, I'm actually located in Fresno, and I live 1 mile away, a couple miles away from the where today's the Fresno Fairgrounds, but it used to be the processing center for Fresno. My office sits in used to be the Pinedale internment camp, and then I want to say about 3 blocks away from my house, there's a Japanese monument dedicated to the families of Japanese. But I never, I mean, personally, I never really looked into, the stories. Even though here in the Central Valley, it's very paramount and it's historically all over the place here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm from the West Coast, so I just learned about it a little bit in school, but not much. But every time we do a screening, everybody comes up to us and say like they didn't know about the story or like they barely learned about it. So it's really cool to see people like kind of opening up to what the story is.
yeah, and even like one of the places we filmed at was Manzanar, was actually one of the internment camps, and like that's on the route to I think like Yosemite. I think that's the way.
Yeah, Big
Or
Bear.
Big Bear, that area. And there's not a lot left anymore. Like they took a lot of the buildings down. And so people drive by it and you see like, historic site and you just see rocks and no one knows what that is. And so it's like, hundreds of thousands, maybe, even more go by it every single year, but they never think twice to stop by and learn what that actually is. So that's part of the idea of doing this film, is to get new audiences and new people to explore it. So
Yeah, they're none of these structures are really around. I know the Japanese monument that was dedicated here in Fresno was built with wood left over from one of the internment camps, but that internment camp was, I think I read it was in Arizona, so a lot of it is not, no longer exist here anymore. But getting back to your story, how did you want to basically write the story? Because besides, the Japanese internment camp and so on, how did you come across the story of the two brothers?
yeah, so actually both my grandfather and his brother served in the 442nd. My grandfather 442nd, his brother was in the 100th. And so, like I said, just constantly being around these stories. And when it came time to like for us to get a chance to make this, it was thinking about what kind of stories do I want to tell? And there are some like fictionalized elements of it. But so the way I kind of described it was, this film and my family is kind of the vessel for the Japanese American community, and kind of using this to kind of tell these storylines that people don't otherwise know about. And so, like I said, just growing up around it and then going and doing the short and figuring out, it's a short, so it's a limited budget, and finding out resources and places we can film and actually kind of tailoring the script to sort of matching what we could afford and what locations we can get to. Like the top of my head, like the battle scene is the big stuff, right? So we actually met a World War II collector up in Northern California in Petaluma, and that's actually his backyard when you see the film. Uh, and so like it's catering and tailoring the battle scene based off of like the resources we had and the locations we had. And it was still like taking inspiration and instilling stories that I heard from my grandfather as well as like other veterans, like when I was a child, but it's for the, you know, the greater community. So
I'm actually amazed because I have never heard of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, because I had this impression for some unknown reason that any Japanese Americans wasn't even allowed close to a gun here on U.S. soil.
yeah, actually what happened was, so, you know, bombing of Pearl Harbor, and there was a lot of Japanese Americans in Hawaii that were reserves, and they were like, they bombed our country, let's go get them, I'm ready to fight. And the military or the government was actually like, whoa, we don't trust you guys, so we're gonna like basically kind of strip you of any rank or any like ability to do anything. And then as the war progressed, you know, Japanese Americans being put into camps, and the government was kind of like, okay, well, let's kind of see if people want to do this. And obviously like with recruitment and trying to get more people to fight overseas. And so it was kind of a twofold where they saw it as an opportunity to, you know, hey, you're Japanese American, you want to say you're American, why don't you prove it and actually volunteer and sign up. And they kind of presented that to, you know, members in the camp specifically. And my grandfather is one of them that, you know, this is my home, this is my country, I'm going to defend this. And that's kind of how he got called into it. So
Most excellent. Now, you mentioned the authenticity. You have to find, you know, the proper uniforms, the proper guns, the proper equipment. Tell us more about this collector in Petaluma. I want to say that's near the Bay Area, right?
Yeah, Northern California.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just found out about him through, we went to San Jose State University, and some students years ago used to film short films on his property. I think the collector, he's also kind of like a film, like he makes his own films, I think, on his own property. And so he had everything, not the costumes, some of them, but we actually rented the costumes from a local costume house who his father actually was in the 442nd. So that's how we were able to get it to be really authentic.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we reached out to, we worked with an armorer, Mike Tristano and Clay Van Sickle, and they provided a lot of the weaponry, like replicas and blank firing guns as well too. And so we had a discussion with them about like what would be period correct at that time, and kind of working backwards with the resources they had and how we can make sure it felt authentic.
In the authenticity of things, I know you're on a short film budget. You know, you don't have, you know, 150 or $100 million and everything like that. Tell us how you pulled off the special effects. Was it basically, you know, like little explosions, or did you have to rely on VFX?
Yeah, it was actually all practical. VFX in some ways is a little bit more expensive, I think.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, so it was all practical, but we both came up through crew. So I've been a production coordinator. He was a grip for a long time. So we knew a lot of people who could help us out. And we had a special effects team that they like, you know, pretty much donated a lot of their resources to this. And yeah, I think the explosion was, we had like 4 chances to get it right.
Really?
We could afford to do more than that.
It was a little nerve-wracking because
Yeah.
one of the explosions didn't work for like the first half of the day, and so we're kind of like, oh. And then like my stunt coordinator comes over and he's like, don't worry, we can just CG this. And I'm like, there's no budget for CG.
Yeah.
This is not we don't have a backup plan. But I think like doing it realistic was also very, or doing it real on set was very important from a performance standpoint too, like talking with the actors and the stunt coordinator and everyone, where using blanks and using, you know, air cannons and stuff like that really just kind of made them feel a part of the world. You know, throwing dust at them, you know, throwing squib hits around them and stuff like that. It really just engaged them a lot more. Whereas opposed to if it was all replicas and like, don't worry, we're going to add it in later. You oftentimes when you watch that stuff like that, you feel like the guns are kind of weightless and you feel like they're not reacting to what's actually happening. And so like when there's like an explosion, for example, it's like the actors knew it was going to happen, but they didn't know exactly when. So it's like they'll be walking, and then like you can all of a sudden it'll go off, and then it's like them actually like feeling the shockwave from it and stuff like that. So
I was gonna say, in a production like this, you don't have like an entire professional stunt crew to run through the battlefield, right?
yeah, our stunt coordinator Alfred Singh, he was really awesome, and it was about getting everyone up to speed and feeling comfortable and trained. And so actually, when we went out and did the battle scene, we spent an entire day of weapons training, along with just kind of like walking through the scenes and like how to stunt fall, how to work all this stuff out. And so he was a major component in making sure all the actors felt comfortable and capable of doing it. So
Especially the fact that today in the industry, safety is the number one thing that's on everyone's concern, especially using guns or replica guns or explosions like that now these days.
Yeah, that was really important to us. We filmed it last summer, so that was like the first thing we thought of when we reached out to an armor down here, like 4 months, 5 months before we even started filming, just so we can make sure everything is as safe as possible.
yeah, and we talking with our stunt coordinator, like at first he was like, oh, you want to do blanks, and he was a little concerned, but then he read the script and we talked about it, and he said, like obviously something like John Wick, where everything, it's high action, in your face with the weaponry, no way, 100% we're not going to do that. But we kind of talked about the authenticity of like, a World War II battle scene where it's like you can barely see the person you're shooting at half the time, and like taking those proper steps of like where the camera is, and making sure that everyone knows where to go and what to do, and kind of have that plan of attack. And I think at the end of the day, it really paid off. Like, especially if you watch the film and you see them firing and having to reload. Like a couple times they'll mess up a reload, and that's not acting, that's realistic, because the guns would jam just like in back in the war. And so you see like Brent Yoshida, like our actor, like trying to like Grantham get the bullet out and stuff like that too. So
How many days did it take you for this filming production for a short film?
It was 7 days total, and we had a few rehearsal days. So
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And for the length of the film, I want to say it's 20 plus minutes for yourself. Was it difficult to basically pare it down to 20 minutes? Was it longer? Was it shorter? Or how did you guys finally decide on the length of your short film?
I think like the script changed a little bit here and there based off like locations and budget, but the overarching kind of idea behind it never really shifted. And I think we never really went into it with the concern about wanting to hit a special, specific runtime. I mean, the reality is the film's 21 minutes with credits, and if we wanted to hit like, a lower proper like short film time, we'd probably wanting to hit 15 minutes. But we said we really like the script where it is, and we think that these are all the pieces that we need. And so we never really set out to hit a specific time period. It just kind of worked out that way when we put it together.
And let's not forget to talk about the cast. Tell us about the cast, and if I recall seeing the names on the cast, I want to say all of them are Japanese. I could be wrong.
Our two leads are Japanese. So Jonathan Tanigaki, he's actually second generation. He's Nisei himself too, and so that was really cool, being able to like hear his backstory and that interaction. And then Brent Yoshida, who plays his brother John, he is Japanese American as well, and his grandparents were actually at the internment camps at Manzanar. And so we actually went and filmed out there. His grandfather's name was carved into one of the rocks.
Wow.
At the historic site. So
this actually lends even more credence to your short film in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there were a lot of like small little connections like that. The kid actor in it, his grandfather was also involved in the camps or something. Exactly.
There's like this famous sign,
Yeah.
or this famous photograph of I'm not gonna, it was a little derogatory, but it's basically a supermarket saying Japanese aren't welcome anymore. And that that it had some ties to his family too. And like I've always seen that photo and never really associated anything. And once we started filming and connecting these pieces together, and they said, hey, this is that's where my grandfather grew up, and these are these, he was affected by this. And so really kind of building the community while we're filming too. So
yeah,
most excellent. So do you have ideas down the road to expand the story further, possibly to a feature film, or this is a one and done type of deal?
No, definitely like the next step of this would be wanting to do a feature of it. And there's so many stories that we can expand upon. And like kind of something that we talk about a lot too is we don't get to see a lot of time in it in the film just because it's a short film, but really seeing what life was like in the internment camps as well too. And so, you know, based on my family story, they had a sister as well who was in the camps. And so it's like really seeing not only what it meant to be in the camps, but also what it meant to be a woman in the camps too, or what it meant to be a child in the camps, and how you have all these different, you know, ideas of what it means to grow up in those situations. And so really kind of exploring all those themes is very exciting to me, and I would love to do it as a feature.
Most excellent. And is it still continuing on the film festival, sir? I think you mentioned that next week it's being played at one film festival.
Yeah, next week we're playing at the Naples International Film Festival in Florida. I would say we're about halfway through our circuit, so next year we're going to continue with just a few more, because we kind of started in the middle of this year, and so it's probably like a year's worth of festival runs. And then currently we're playing at the Silicon Valley Asian Pacific Film Festival. So
Well, that is most excellent. Well, hey, congratulations to both of you, Darren and Jessica, for this wonderful short film of Nisei. It's very eye-opening and very educational, and I don't really know the real story behind your family, because it's a little bit fictionalized, but in the end they're heroes.
Yeah. No, thank you. Like I said, it's just about getting the stories out there, getting new people to watch this, and even if they go home and start Googling about the 442nd or about the camps or stuff like that, that's, you know, that's the end goal with this film first and foremost, is to educate and get more people inspired. So
Most excellent. Well, hey, thank you for speaking to us, and I'm sure down the road we'll have a chance to do this again.
awesome.
yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Right.